Welcome to the video recording of our February webinar that has to do with indicator A107, Effective Classroom Management. I am Alessandro Montanari, and today I get the fortune of having the incredible Michael Taranto with us, explaining not only his expertise on classroom management, but how schools can better address indicator A107 in their comprehensive plans. Michael's here to guide us through this, so I'm going to just let him take control of the PowerPoint, and here he goes.
Hi, as Alessandro said, I'm Michael Taranto. I'm a school support coach with Educator Support Services. My primary role is to support our low-performing schools across the state. As part of my work, though, I spend a lot of time helping schools create their school improvement plans in NC STAR, and I also give feedback to schools on their NC STAR plans as well. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to you a little bit about A107. So our outcomes for today, by the end of our time together, we hope that you'll have a better understanding around the fact that how we manage our classrooms really positively or negatively impacts student achievement. And that has to do with an effective component as well as a logistical component. We're going to spend some time today getting to know A107, which is around how we use classroom management and reinforce rules and procedures by teaching them. We'll spend some time talking about the effective and logistical parts of classroom management, both culture, climate, relationships, a little bit about rules and procedures, classroom setup, and we'll also share a procedure for creating action steps and ways to help you make your action steps a little bit more targeted through this procedure where we develop, communicate, support, monitor, and sustain. Hopefully, after you finish watching this video, you'll be able to go back into your school improvement plan and an NC STAR and create action steps for key indicator A107, as well as actually action steps for any other indicator as well. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do is spend a little bit of time talking about A107. Within the NC STAR Weebly, we have a document called the Wise Ways. Every single indicator in NC STAR has a Wise Ways that's associated with it. The Wise Ways are a series of documents that explain the research behind the indicator. They provide some guiding questions, and they also share some strategies and tips for implementation. So this is a really valuable tool that you can use to help you as you're trying to better understand an indicator and also as you're looking for ways to support full implementation of that indicator as well. Two things I want to pull out of the Wise Ways that I want to share with you. The first one is around a little bit of research behind this particular indicator. Basically, what this is saying here is that if you compare two classrooms, if you compare a classroom where the teacher is using rules and procedures, stating those expectations, getting those kids buy-in into that. If you compare that with a classroom with a teacher that does not do that, what we find is that in classrooms where teachers are spending time with rules and procedures, there's about a 26% gain on achievement. So that's a really important thing to think about in terms of how important spending time on rules and procedures is in your classroom. The other thing that I want to share with you from the Wise Ways is around 10 student behaviors that have to be taught to kids. The first one is around being responsible. We want to make sure that kids understand that they have an obligation to engage in safe, ethical, legal behaviors. We want them to manage their emotions. How can they regulate their feelings so that what they're doing actually is helping in the handling of a situation as opposed to impeding the handling of a situation? We want kids to solve problems creatively. How can they explore alternate possibilities that lead to a very positive outcome? We want kids to respect others, really behaving in such a way that they recognize that other people deserve to be treated with kindness and compassion, much as they would probably want someone to treat them. We want to communicate effectively, using both verbal and nonverbal skills to express themselves and really promoting a positive exchange with other people. We want them to build relationships, making sure that they establish really healthy and rewarding connections with individual groups that actually last a long time. We want them to negotiate fairly, really talking and communicating in such a way that that there's this satisfactory resolution to whatever the conflict might be, and that everybody that's involved in it has their needs addressed. We want kids to refuse provocation, giving them some skills so that they can make a decision not to engage in unwanted, unsafe, and unethical behavior. We want kids to seek help, making sure that they understand at what times do I need to ask for help, who do I go to for help, and we want kids to act ethically, really making sure that they understand or learn how to guide their decisions and their actions by using principles that could be from a recognized legal or professional code, or even a moral or faith-based system of conduct. One of the things that I realized as I was kind of going through these 10 behaviors is that this is not just for students, that actually school staff, whether it's support staff or teachers or administrators, should be really living these same behaviors as well. They should be modeling these with each other and practicing these with each other and in front of their students as well. Let's talk a little bit more about rules and procedures and really what's the difference between the two of them. So when we think about a rule, it's really an expectation for behavior. How are students supposed to interact with each other? How are they supposed to interact with the teacher? How are they supposed to interact with classroom materials? So a sample rule might be treat others as you would want them to treat you. Pretty common rule. Most people are familiar with that one. A procedure is an instruction that students are expected to follow for specific activities. Here's an example at the elementary level. When the bell rings for recess, quietly line up on the left side of the door with your hands to your side, one person behind the other. One thing to think about is that rules have consequences. Procedures do not. However, usually there's some rule that's tied to a procedure. So for example, when we think about this procedure that we have here and this rule on this slide, if a student is not quietly lining up, if they've got their hands on everybody else, if they're purposefully cutting in front of someone else, they are not treating others as they would want to be treated. So in a way, there would be a consequence for really the behavior that was happening as they were kind of enacting that procedure, but it's really tied more towards a rule. So rules have consequences, procedures do not. Some tips for creating rules and procedures. So your rules, you want to only have about 4 or 5. If you have more than that, it can be overwhelming for kids. They need to be positive, brief, and really applicable to a variety of situations. They do need to be broad. We go into a lot of classrooms where we see a rule where raise your hands before you talk. That's really targeted, and if you're thinking of only having 4 or 5 rules and that's one of them, it kind of limits what you're doing. So we would want a teacher to think about, well, what kind of rule would cover that behavior around raising my hand? So it could be a rule around mutual respect. So that way you've got this rule of respect, and then you could have a ton of different behaviors around that in which ways kids are supposed to act. So thinking broadly, I think will make it a little bit easier for you to have rules that cover a lot of different behaviors. We want to avoid beginning with words like no or don't. We want to state what we want to see, not what we don't want to see. And consequences should not stop learning. This is a really key piece. I had a colleague who told me a story about how he was in a school where a student was not using an iPad appropriately, and so the teacher took it away. And it was during a time when all the kids were using an iPad to do research. So now this student doesn't have the tool that he or she needs to actually do the work. So learning has stopped. So we want to think about that when we're thinking about consequences, making sure that we do things that do not impede learning. The last one is that we want to include students in the creation of rules. Getting that buy-in is really, really important. I worked with a teacher a long time ago who was having an issue with her students in terms of behavior. And I asked her, I said, so who created the rules in your classroom? She shared her rules with me, and I asked her, who created them? She said, well, I did. And then I just asked her, well, how's that working out for you? And she, honestly said, it's not. And so we had to step back and start over. And so we worked with her to help her students help her create the rules. And things got better as a result for her. So her class became a little bit more manageable. Procedures. If it can go wrong, you probably need a procedure. Take time to think about all the possible things that could happen during your school day and ask yourself, do I need a procedure for this? Is there a possibility that something may go haywire? And if so, create a procedure. But along with that, we really have to spend time modeling how that procedure works, and not modeling only the right way, but the wrong way to do it. And an easy way to do that is to talk about the procedure, have kids discuss what the wrong way is to do it, and then have some kids get up and actually model how to do it the wrong way. Have a debrief with your students. Okay, so what did they do that was wrong? How could they make it right? And then have those same kids model the right way to do it. This isn't just a one-shot deal. This is something that has to happen repeatedly over time until those procedures are just really ingrained in the daily life of your classroom. So we've talked about rules and procedures, but classroom management is more than just that. A107's focus is on rules and procedures, but I think to be successful with A107, you have to do more than just do the work around rules and procedures. So we've talked about the first 3 bullets here. Another really important part of classroom management is how you set up your classroom and how you organize your classroom. And that can really make a difference in terms of classroom management. If you set your classroom up where everything is in rows, how things work in your classroom will be different than if you set your desks up into groups of 4. How you organize your classroom is important. Can your kids easily access a book? Can they access a Chromebook or an iPad? How do they get to math manipulatives? Things like that. Are things easy to find? If kids have trouble finding those things, that just opens up an opportunity for disengagement and the possibility of them acting out, which is not what we want to happen. The last piece is around rigorous instruction, making sure that we have developed some instruction that is engaging to kids, that is really challenging them to think critically, something that keeps them so busy and on task that they don't have time to act out. Another part of classroom management is the effective use of classroom management, and that revolves around culture, climate, and relationships. The climate of a school is the attitude, mood, or behaviors in a school at any given moment in time. So it could be that the PTA put candy bars in everyone's box and everyone's happy. Oh, this is great. The PTA cares about us. Well, maybe it only happened one time, but it promotes a positive climate in the school. It could also work something around that might be a little bit more negative as well. The principal at the last minute calls a staff meeting after school and everybody's grousing about it and not happy about it, okay? But it's just this one-off thing, okay? A culture, though, is this consistent and pervasive personality of the school. It's usually unwritten rules, it's norms, it's procedures that really influence every aspect of the school. What tends to happen is if some little climate piece repeats itself over and over and over again, it becomes part of the culture of the school, whether that's positive or negative. That being said, I want to share this chart with you. We've discovered that really across the life of the school, there are 5 areas that are affected by culture and climate. The school, which is pretty broad, maybe things around administration, things around interaction with colleagues, around interaction with parents, and interaction with students. What you can see is on the left side, I have some climate examples, both positive and negative, and on the right side, I have some culture examples, both positive and negative. I want to take a minute to focus on the colleagues here. So maybe they're having a PLC and they've collaborated together to create a CFA, a common formative assessment. Maybe that doesn't happen all the time, and they walk away feeling very excited about that. Wow, our team is working together. This is great. Well, if that continues to happen over and over and over again, it can actually lead towards a positive culture of teamwork and collaboration within the school. On the flip side of that, you're in your PLC or grade level meeting and a teacher shoots down what you said. Okay, well, if it's a one-off thing, maybe that teacher was in a really bad mood that day and didn't mean it, and that's okay. But if this starts to happen all the time on a regular basis, then we start to build a culture of disrespect, and that's not something that we want in our schools. Another example, a teacher helps a struggling student successfully complete a project. Okay, that's great. Okay, if that happens, if teachers are really making an effort to do this all the time, then it can lead to a culture of high expectations for achievement, not only for those struggling students, but for all students. On the flip side of that, Teachers just, it's just not a great day, and a teacher normally has great classroom management, and they have to refer a student to the office for discipline issues. Normally they can handle it in their classroom, but for whatever reason today, it's not happening, okay? But if it starts to happen on a regular basis where a teacher is consistently sending kids to the office, or multiple teachers in grade levels or multiple teachers in the school are always sending kids to the office, it's such a case that there's just like this line waiting outside the principal's office or the assistant principal's office, then that leads to a culture of low expectations for student behavior. So we want to be really aware of what things happen in the school that are related to climate and what things are related to culture, and being careful to make sure that if something negative happens, that we nip it in the bud and we make sure that it doesn't happen on a repeated basis so it doesn't become part of the culture. Of course, if it's positive, we do want it to happen all the time because we want a positive culture in our schools. I saved relationships for last. I love this quote by Robert Marzano. The quality of relationships teachers have with students is the keystone of effective management and perhaps even the entirety of teaching. Teachers can have the best written lesson plans. They can have a beautifully organized classroom, but they cannot, for whatever reason, manage their classroom in terms of behavior. And it's probably because they haven't spent the time to build relationships with their students. That doesn't mean that you are going to a child's baseball game or their birthday party or attending a concert. You certainly can if you want to. But what it does mean, simple things, standing at the door as they enter the classroom, shaking their hands, greeting them by name, asking them how their day has been so far or how their ball game happened the night before. This could happen, these kinds of little conversations can happen on the playground. They can happen while you're waiting in line, to go to the water faucet or at lunch or something like that. But really making an effort to build a relationship that builds trust between you and the student will go a really long way. A couple of years ago, I was in a third grade classroom and I said something to my students that did not come out the way that I wanted it to come out. And I had a student raise his hand and he said, "Mr. Toronto, what would our principal think if she was standing at the door and heard you say that?" And of course, I immediately stopped and I was like, wow, thank you so much for saying that to me. I really appreciate that you said that to me. I am really sorry that I said what I said. It didn't come out the way that I wanted it to come out. This is what I meant to say. And so I explained that to them. What I can say is that that never would have happened if I had not spent the time building relationships with these kids in my classroom. He never would have felt comfortable being able to raise his hand and push back with me the way he did, but he knew that it was safe for him to do that, and so he was able to do that. And so even that moment continued to build relationships with my kids because it showed them that they can trust me to do and say the right things with them. So relationships really, to me, they just underpin everything that we do in a classroom. PBIS. A lot of schools have a plan or have PBIS mentioned in their school improvement plan. But what we tend to see is that the school improvement plan focuses on PBIS as a school-wide plan. We want you to consider actually thinking about PBIS as a leveled sort of system so that we have not only a school-wide plan, but we also have a grade level plan and that we also have classroom plans. So here's what it might look like. In a school-wide plan, many plans have this. They have this monthly celebration, which is great, but for many kids, waiting a month to celebrate their good behavior is way too long. They can't manage that for a month. So consider at the grade level maybe doing a bi-weekly celebration for those kids who are doing really well. And even in the classroom, possibly a weekly celebration. So that idea of taking whatever's in that school-wide plan, but then differentiating it at the grade level and also at the classroom is something that you might want to consider doing as well. What we're going to do next is spend some time actually talking about how to complete your comprehensive plan. So our focus is going to be on how I might complete the plan using A1.07, but I'm hoping that after this video that you'll be able to take these tips and actually use them for any indicator that you have in your plan. So the first thing that we want schools to do is really work on their goals. When we review and give feedback to plans, we see quite a large number of schools that have no goals in their plan. And for us, it just becomes this question around, well, how can you complete your plan if you don't know what your goals are, if you don't know what you're trying to achieve? So spending the time to create goals is really important. You do that in the Set Direction section of NC STAR. When you print out your comprehensive plan, it actually shows up in the front on the first page of your plan. Use your data to create your goals. Not just your performance data or your EVOS data, but think about other data sources that you have. Do you have discipline logs? Do you have M-class data, Reading 3D data? Teacher working conditions survey data is really important data to use. If your school has had a comprehensive needs assessment, you can also use that information. You want to write your goals as SMART goals. Make sure they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And something else that we're actually recommending that you do is connect your goals to specific indicators. So what I've done is I've actually created a goal. Pretend school, ABC school, and they are having a little bit of trouble with discipline. So a goal that I've created for this school is by June 2018, as measured by a discipline referral log, ABC school reduced the number of discipline referrals by 25%, from 175 to 131. You'll notice that this is a SMART goal. All right, it's specific, it's around discipline, it's measurable, 25%. It's attainable, okay, again, that 25%. You know, if we do an 80% goal, that may not work. And I might tell a school, you know what, that might be too high. Have you considered doing something else? It's relevant. We know that if we do this, then we're going to have a better life in our classrooms in terms of classroom management. And of course, it's timely by the end of the school year. You'll notice that there are three numbers in parentheses afterwards, A107, A401, and A406. What I did was I tied this goal to three key indicators, and I want to show you what those are. The first one is A107, which is around effective classroom management, which is what we've been talking about. But another indicator that's tied to this goal is really around a tiered instructional system that helps us deliver evidence-based instruction. And then another one is around being attentive to students' emotional states and guiding them in terms of managing their emotions. That ties so well with what we talked about earlier, those 10 behaviors that we have to teach kids. So you can see that a goal can actually be tied to multiple indicators. And on the flip side, an indicator can be tied to multiple goals as well. So using this, I want to kind of walk through what this might look like in your plan. So everybody has this box. It's called the How It Will Look When Fully Met box. When we look at plans, we see a variety of things. And here we see very limited information in this box to very detailed information in this box. What we want you to think about is your vision for your school. What's this going to look like 3 years from now or even 5 years from now? And the How It Will Look When Fully Met box is your opportunity to talk about your vision. What do we want to see if we're really fully implementing this indicator? What kinds of things would someone see in this school? What I've done is I've created a sample how it will look when fully met box using this specific goal. Remember, we're tying this goal to A107. So here's a sample. Teachers and students are creating classroom rules and procedures that promote positive behavior. Rules and procedures are consistently enforced with a variety of positive and negative consequences. Teachers are consistently teaching and reinforcing positive behaviors, resulting in increased student accountability for behavior and a more positive school climate and culture. Classrooms are well organized. Teachers and students exhibit positive relationships toward each other, teacher to student, student to student, student discipline referrals are decreasing, resulting in more time spent on instruction, leading to increased student outcomes. So this is the way I chose to write it. Many schools, their districts have specific ways that they want them to write their goals too. We see a lot of these where an actual goal, for example, this by June 2018 goal, might be part of the How It Will Look When Fully Met box. So really how you do this is up to you and also up to how the district wants you to do it too. But again, just remember this is a sample. The next thing that we want to do after we've done that, how it will look when fully met box, is to start creating action steps that are going to get us to that vision or that goal that we've set. One of the things my colleagues and I have noticed as we've been giving feedback on plans is that the schools that have more rigorous, comprehensive plans have one or more of these parts or procedures, actions in their plans to help them create their action steps, develop, communicate, support implementation, monitor impact, and sustain practice. So what I want to do is go through each of these and talk to you a little bit about what it means and give you an example of what it might look like using our how it will look when fully met box, and then also the goal that we've created. So the first one is to develop. So thinking about what do you need to create to help you achieve your goal. It could be a document, a survey, a form, some kind of professional development. Maybe you don't have to create anything at all, but again, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So our sample action step is to create professional development on the effective and logistical sides of classroom management, including rules and procedures, classroom organization, student behaviors, and relationships. How are we going to communicate that? How do you want staff to know what you've developed? Are you going to hold a staff meeting, send an email? Maybe you're going to have a PLC or a grade level meeting, or maybe you're going to do professional development for your whole staff on classroom management and share the plan for implementation, monitoring, and sustainability. How will you support implementation? Many times teachers go to PD and whatever they learned ends up on a shelf gathering dust. Really important to have some kind of follow-up plan, especially when you do any kind of professional development. So in this case, we'll have grade level teams meet for 5 weeks right after the PD to focus on 2 specific student behaviors that need to be taught. Going back to those 10 that I shared with you at the front of the video. Teachers discuss strategies for teaching them, teach them over the next week, and discuss results at their next grade level meeting. Then what we want to do is monitor impact. How do we know this is working? How do we know that we're actually getting to where we need to go? In this case, I actually have 2 action steps. And you can have more than 1 action steps for each of these pieces. In this case, the first one is we want leadership to create and use a walkthrough form with a schedule and share the specific feedback with teachers. We also want leadership to check lesson plans for evidence of instruction. I could actually add a 3rd action step around reviewing PLC or grade level meeting minutes to see if they've actually had conversations around those behaviors. How do we sustain practice, okay, after you've achieved your goals? This one has 4 steps. We want to do the same PD for teachers that are new to the school. We want to provide a refresher at the beginning of the year for returning teachers. We want to implement spot checks and additional grade level meetings throughout the year. And we want to revisit the assess, create, and monitor cycle. If it's not working, we have to figure out why. So we want to go back and maybe we need more data. Maybe we need to do something different. Are we monitoring this correctly? Maybe we need to create a different way to monitor that. I covered one part of that how it will look when fully met box, and that's around this kind of global piece around classroom management. But if I wanted to do something more specific around, say, the discipline referrals, I just have another sample to share with you here around discipline referrals. So creating a log and referral forms, training staff on why and how to use them. Supporting implementation by meeting with teachers during grade level meetings or departmental meetings to share strategies used, creating data reports on the number of referrals, sharing that, discussing additional strategies, and then again, sustaining, just like before, training new teachers, refreshing on returning teachers, sharing a report, a yearly report, and again, revisit the assess, create, and monitor cycle to make those changes to the plan. Some things to keep in mind. You want to use your school's data to help create your goals in the set direction of NC STAR. And like I said, there are various types of data that you can use, but explore multiple sets of data. The more you have, the better your goals will be, the more targeted they'll be for the work that you want to do in your school. Tie your goals to specific indicators. Again, a goal can be linked to multiple indicators, or an indicator can be linked to multiple goals. Plan for multiple years. This is a big one. So we just finished reviewing plans that were submitted in December. And what we see in a lot of plans is that everything is done by June 2018. And it's a ton of stuff. And I think what happens is that it almost becomes overwhelming for schools. There's so much to do that they can't do it well. and then it becomes more of a compliance issue. Check it off, I did it, but there's no positive change as a result of that. So we encourage you to plan for multiple years. This is a living document, and it's going to change on a regular basis. So think about, for maybe 1 year, 3 to 8 indicators that you might want to work on, okay? And then plan out for years after that. And maybe for one indicator that you're working on, it's just creating perhaps a document that is needed for the next year when you really go full speed on that particular indicator. But again, thinking about multiple years. School improvement doesn't happen in a day. It takes time, and you want to plan for that as well. Make sure that your action steps fully address what you put in your how it will look when fully met box. We see a lot of action steps that have nothing to do with what they've written in that box, or we see things written in the box that have no action steps to address them. So when you're going through your plan and your marking action steps have been complete, when they're all marked as complete for that particular indicator, you're going to get a pop-up asking you how you're going to sustain implementation of the indicator. This is different than the sustained implementation that I just shared with you. The sustained implementation that I just shared with you is around whatever that thing is that you created. In this part, it's how you're going to sustain all parts of the indicator as a whole. What are you going to do? So it is a little bit different. We get a lot of questions. How do I know that an indicator is at full implementation? And there are 4 things that you want to keep in mind, and I'm not presenting these in any particular order, but you want to have all action steps for your indicator marked as complete. You also want the school improvement team to have a conversation, a critical conversation around, are we consistently doing what we said we would be doing in that how it will look when fully met box? We also want to have data that supports our reaching or positive movement towards reaching the outcomes of the goal connected to that indicator. And we want evidence of implementation uploaded into NC STAR. We see a lot of plans that have are marked as full implementation, but there's no evidence in NC STAR for us to look at to say, yes, you really are doing this. So keep these things in mind. On the flip side, when is an indicator not at full implementation? Well, if you've got action steps that have been completed, but the school's not consistently doing what is in the how it will look when fully met box, that's a problem. And your school is not meeting the outcome set in the goal that you've connected to that indicator. If these things are happening, you've got to revisit your success cycle. Assess, create, and monitor. Revising and adding additional action steps is needed. I wanted to share some resources with you as well. The First Day of School by Harry Wong, very popular. Most people are familiar with that. Found a really nice article in Edutopia, 19 Big and Small Classroom Management Strategies. You might find that helpful. Love this book, The Art and Science of Teaching by Robert Marzano. Has a great section in it around classroom management with a lot of research and a lot of action steps and tips that you can use. NC STAR itself actually has training modules around instructional planning, classroom management, and instructional delivery. There's some handouts and a workbook that you can use. It's a pretty cool tool if you want. Some of my colleagues discovered the Scholastic Classroom Setup tool. This is a really neat tool. You go online and you can drag and drop windows and doors and desks and cabinets and all sorts of things like that, and just kind of set up your classroom before you start moving furniture. Another article by Edutopia, What Students Remember Most About Teachers. This is a nice article, and it's about relationships. And the last one is the Silver Strong Teacher Self-Assessment Guide. This is a really cool tool. It's pretty comprehensive. There are a variety of areas that you can self-assess as a teacher. There's a section on classroom management, and there's also, I believe, one around climate and culture as well. So it's a really nice tool that you can use for your own personal self-reflection in terms of what are you doing at school in regards to classroom management and other things as well. If you have any other questions, you are free to contact either Alessandro or myself. Our email is there. We are happy to help you out in any way that we can. So that being said, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.